Okay, right off the bat, if you're looking at this picture on your mobile device, you might want to pause and click the link. If you're on YouTube, click the link if you can to the blog. If you're on the blog, look at this on Flickr, because it's easy to overlook both things in this photo. The moon is pretty obvious, but there's a spot down and to the left, which is the planet Venus, and it's those two elements that make the complete picture. The goal here was not to shoot a picture of the moon, but the moon and Venus together. And if you don't see Venus, I think it'd be worth your time to click through to a larger version so you can see Venus. In any case, here's a picture of the moon and the planet Venus. And I got the idea for this picture totally out of the blue, although you could say it was divinely inspired. I was, as I do most mornings, I was sitting there in my living room looking out the window and just spending time in prayer. It's a good way to start my day, and I would recommend that to anyone. While it's still quiet before the sun comes up and you get to all the hustle and bustle of the day, just take a few minutes and spend some time in prayer. And as I was looking out over the horizon, over the trees in my backyard, I saw the moon, and then this super bright dot next to it, which I thought was Venus, and then I confirmed as such with this app on my phone. And I thought, man, that would be a super cool picture to take, but there's no way I can take that picture. And I had in mind, the picture you see here is exactly what I had in my mind. But I thought, well, there's no way I can take that picture. I don't have the right gear. But then I thought, well, I'll try it anyway and see what I can do. And the reason I didn't have the right gear, I thought I didn't, was because my zoom lens only goes to 200 millimeters. It's a 70-200, and that's not enough to get a good picture of the moon. You really need at least a 300, and hopefully even longer than that, unless you've really got a high megapixel camera, then you can really crop in. In my case, I thought, well, my 200 millimeter lens, that's not enough. But then I remembered, well, I'm not trying to take a picture of the moon. I need a complete composition with the moon and Venus and some edges on the side. I didn't want it to be only the moon and Venus. I wanted some blackness of space as well. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I can make this happen. And the nice thing about the 70-200 zoom lens is you'll find those in values of f2.8 and f4. Mine's an f2.8, and there's not much light here. So I knew that this lens, as the more I thought of it, I thought, well, this just might work. I use my D7100 instead of my D750 because you get an extra reach on the end of that because it's a crop sensor camera. It's 24 crop sensor megapixels instead of 24 full frame megapixels, so you get a little extra reach on there. And I had a couple parameters. Number one, shutter speed. You can't use a fast or a slow shutter speed on the moon, not if you want any detail. And I needed a fast enough shutter speed to freeze the motion of the moon, which if you go below 100th of a second, you're kind of asking for trouble. And I shot this as a 90th of a second, and I shot others at a 45th, and it was just a blur. Faster than that is always better, but I had to find this balance of fast shutter speed or a slow enough shutter speed to let in enough light, but fast enough to freeze the motion of the moon. So 1/90th was my compromise, and it worked out pretty well. And if you click through the full size on Flickr, you can actually see a lot of detail in the moon. I also knew that I needed a large aperture, and this is where my lens turned out to be a really good thing. It goes all the way to f2.8, so despite the fact that there's very little light in this photo, my lens could let in a ton of light to kind of compensate for that fact that this is just a sliver of the moon. So it went from being a really bad situation to a really good situation. I'm really happy with what I was able to get here. I lowered my ISO all the way to 100, although in retrospect, I probably could have gotten away with ISO 200 and shot at a faster shutter speed, but that's okay. I'm happy with what I got. And I shot at a low ISO so I could have plenty of room to edit if I need to. Turns out virtually no editing was required on this, so, well, there you go. You live and learn. I don't know much about the stars and the sky and all that, so I don't know how often this particular composition is going to happen. But I know that tomorrow the moon is not going to look like this. And it might be in close proximity to Venus, but it wouldn't be at the same time. I mean, everything's going to change. And if I go back to the same situation tomorrow, it won't be this. And so I like that I was able to capture this moment in time and create this kind of unique composition. I wish Venus was brighter, but I can't change that at all. And I don't want to artificially make that dot in the sky big. I just want to leave it as is. So hopefully you see this and you see the sense of scale, that how far away these things are. And yes, the moon and Venus are very far away in the actual in their positions in the solar system, but it's neat to see them close together visually from where Earth was at this particular moment in time. And I don't have any lessons or advice other than if you see an interesting shot or what you think might be an interesting shot, but you don't think you can do it, go for it anyway and just see what happens.